The low hum of conversation filled the dimly lit bar, blending with the steady patter of Seattle rain against the windows. I sat there, nursing my whiskey, ice cubes clinking against the glass as I rolled the amber liquid absent-mindedly. It was 9:30 p.m. I checked my phone again, even though I already knew what I'd find. A text from my wife, Lauren, had come in earlier. Working a double at the hospital. Don't wait up. Love you. Yeah, right. I took another slow sip, letting the warmth spread through me, but it did nothing to numb the gnawing suspicion that had been eating at me for months. My fingers, rough from years of building custom motorcycles, tightened around the glass. This bar, just a few blocks from my shop, had become my usual retreat whenever Lauren was on a late shift. I wasn't the jealous type, never had been. But lately, something had felt off. Another drink. The bartender raised an eyebrow at my nearly empty glass. I nodded. Just as the fresh pour arrived, a woman slid onto the stool beside me. She smelled of antiseptic and faint perfume, the unmistakable scent of someone fresh off a hospital shift. I glanced over, recognizing her from the handful of times I'd stopped by to surprise Lauren at work. Dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, tired eyes, scrubs barely visible under her jacket. "You're Lauren's husband, right?" she asked, her voice direct. I hesitated. "Yeah, that's me." She offered a tight-lipped smile. "I'm Emily. We met at the hospital Christmas party last year." I nodded, pretending to remember. "Right. Nice to see you again." Emily let out a long exhale before taking a sip of her drink. God, I needed this. Double shifts are brutal. I turned slightly, feigning casual interest. "You work with Lauren?" "Yeah." "Same department." She shot me a glance. "She's not here with you?" I shook my head. "Working late." Emily let out a snort, an oddly sharp sound, like she found something funny. "Right. Working." The way she said it made the hairs on my neck stand up. I kept my face neutral, my tone easy. "Something funny about that?" Emily hesitated, then shook her head. "Sorry. Not my business." I signaled the bartender. "Another for the lady." She gave me a small smirk. "I like you already." As she took another sip, I leaned in just slightly. "Rough night." "The longest," she sighed. 3 drinks in, and Emily had loosened up. I let her talk, steering the conversation just enough to keep her going. She vented about hospital drama, something about a supervisor being incompetent, a ridiculous scheduling mix-up, the usual workplace complaints. Then she circled back. "Lauren's at the center of it all, of course." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh yeah." "Yeah," Emily said, swirling her drink. "She loves the attention." I gave a non-committal nod. "She's good at her job." That was my go-to line as a supportive husband. Emily's lips quirked in something that wasn't quite a smile. "Oh, she's good at a lot of things." Something in her tone made my stomach tighten. I forced a chuckle. "That's so." She leaned closer, voice dropping. "Look, I don't want to overstep, but you guys have an open thing, right? I mean, she talks about it like you do." My grip on the glass tightened. "An open thing?" Emily waved a lazy hand. "Yeah. You know, your arrangement. She's always dropping hints about how you two have this modern marriage. No limitations, no questions asked. Pretty progressive of you guys." The whiskey turned bitter in my mouth. My heartbeat thudded against my ribs, but years of dealing with high-maintenance clients had taught me how to keep my face blank. I took a slow sip, forcing my expression to stay relaxed. "Lauren's always been ahead of the curve." Emily seemed encouraged by my lack of reaction. "Well, she sure takes advantage of it. Especially with Dr. Andrew Langston." I kept my voice steady. "Langston?" "The cardiologist," Emily clarified, rolling her eyes. "The on-call room isn't as private as they think." I barely heard the rest of what she said. I knew Langston, at least I knew of him. Young, successful, married with kids. I thought back to all those nights Lauren had come home late, claiming exhaustion, barely giving me more than a quick peck before collapsing into bed. Emily must have noticed something shift in my expression because she suddenly looked uncomfortable. "Wait, you do know about him, right?" I mean, she said you were cool with it all. I forced out the lie. Of course. Relief washed over Emily's face. Thank God. I thought I was stepping into something awkward there. She drained the last of her drink. Lauren's got quite the wild side, though. Between us, Langston's kind of an ass. Married too, but I guess that's part of the thrill, right? Every word was a knife. I absorbed the pain, let it settle deep in my chest where it hardened into something else, something cold and sharp. Emily kept talking, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. Oh, and then there's the trainer guy. Total eye candy, but not much going on upstairs, if you know what I mean. My pulse pounded in my ears. Trainer? Yeah, from that fancy gym downtown. Callum Davis. Started as a personal trainer, ended up pretty personal, if you get my drift. Emily giggled at her own joke, then caught herself. God, listen to me gossiping. But, hey, it's fine since you already know. I smiled, even though my skin felt too tight. Of course. I signaled for another round, voice smooth as ever. Tell me more about Lauren at work. Seems like I only ever hear half the stories. By the time Emily stumbled into a cab an hour later, I had more than enough. Dr. Andrew Langston. Married. 3 kids. Reputation for affairs with staff. Callum Davis. Personal trainer. Had no idea Lauren was married. The woman I'd spent 7 years building a life with was a stranger. I walked 3 blocks to my motorcycle, the vintage Triumph I'd rebuilt from the ground up, and rode home through the rain. Neon lights blurred in the wet streets, but my mind was razor sharp. Lauren had betrayed me. Now, I needed proof. I pulled into the driveway just past 11, rain dripping from my jacket as I killed the engine on my Triumph. The house was dark. Lauren wasn't home yet. Supposedly, she was working a late shift. But now, after what I'd learned tonight, I wasn't so sure. I moved through the house silently, flicking on a few lights as I stepped into the kitchen. Everything was just as I'd left it. Clean. Orderly. Deceptively normal. But now, every object around me, the framed wedding photo on the shelf, the expensive knife set I'd gifted Lauren for Christmas, the coffee mug she left on the counter, felt tainted. I poured myself another whiskey, but I wasn't drinking for comfort. I was thinking. Emily had practically handed me everything I needed to confirm my worst fear. Lauren had been sleeping with not one, but 2 men. Dr. Andrew Langston, a married cardiologist at her hospital, and Callum Davis, the personal trainer who had no clue he was dealing with a married woman. But I wasn't going to rush into anything. I needed proof. Something concrete. Something undeniable. Lauren was meticulous about keeping our home in order. She was organized to the point of obsession. That worked in my favor, because if there was anything out of place, I'd know. I started with the bedroom. I pulled open her dresser drawers, scanning through her neatly folded clothes. Everything looked normal: lingerie, workout gear, casual wear. Then I checked her nightstand. The usual items: hand cream, a half-read novel, reading glasses. Nothing that screamed infidelity. But I wasn't looking for the obvious. I moved to her closet. Lauren was a woman who loved expensive things, and her collection of handbags reflected that. I went through each one carefully, checking the pockets. Still nothing. Then, in the back corner of the shelf, I found something different. A small black clutch, one I'd never seen her use. I unzipped the side pocket and felt something solid inside. A phone. Not the iPhone I paid for each month. This was something else, a sleek black Android. I sat on the edge of the bed, turning it over in my hands. It was locked, of course. But I knew Lauren. She wasn't the type to use some random string of numbers she'd never remember. I tried a few easy ones. Her birthday? No. Her mother's birthday? No. I gritted my teeth, frustration creeping in. What would she pick? It had to be something simple, something easy to remember but not obvious. Then it hit me. The hospital's street number. I punched in 1842. The screen unlocked. I inhaled sharply. Bingo! What I found next made my stomach turn. There were text messages dating back 8 months between Lauren and Dr. Langston. Explicit messages. Hotel reservations. Photos. She had been meeting him during her late shifts, booking hotels downtown under fake names. And then, just a few months ago, Callum Davis entered the picture. The messages were newer, less formal, but just as damning. She'd scheduled private training sessions that somehow always overlapped with the nights she told me she was having dinner with friends. And the worst part? Callum had no idea she was married. She even wore her wedding ring to the gym, but must have taken it off when she met up with him. I kept my breathing steady. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't crying. I wasn't angry. Not in the way most men would be. I was focused. I plugged the phone into my laptop and copied everything. Messages, photos, call logs, contacts. If I was going to take her down, I needed every bit of evidence. Just as I finished, the front door clicked open. Lauren was home. I shut the laptop, shoved the burner phone back in the clutch, and returned it to its exact spot. By the time she walked into the kitchen, I was leaning against the counter, sipping my whiskey like I hadn't just uncovered 8 months of betrayal. "Hey," she said, setting down her bag. She looked tired, hair tied back in a loose ponytail, sweater draped over her scrubs. "You're still up?" I smiled. "Thought I'd wait for you." Her shoulders relaxed. "Rough shift," she sighed. 2 cardiac events, short staffing, total chaos. I nodded, taking another sip. "Sounds exhausting." She stretched her arms above her head, rolling her neck. "I need a shower before bed. You should get some sleep." I walked over, pressing a slow kiss to her forehead, hating the feel of her against me. "I'll be up soon." She smiled, eyes soft, as if she truly believed I was still the clueless husband who adored her. As she disappeared up the stairs, I checked my watch. 12:30 a.m. Time to make a plan. The next morning, I played my role like a professional. I kissed Lauren goodbye, watched her drive off to work, then waited a full 30 minutes before making a phone call. It rang twice before a voice picked up. "This is unexpected," Rachel said, voice sharp with curiosity. "I need to talk," I said. "In person. Your place. 1 hour." A pause. Then, "All right. I'll clear my schedule." Rachel was my sister. She was also the only person in my life I trusted completely. She had spent years in military intelligence before moving into private security consulting. She didn't just find the truth, she weaponized it. When I arrived at her downtown condo, she was already waiting with 2 mugs of black coffee and an expression that told me she knew something was wrong before I even said a word. "You look like shit," she said bluntly. "Good to see you too." I took the coffee. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Is it the business?" I met her eyes. "It's Lauren." Rachel's expression hardened. She had never liked Lauren. She never trusted her. And now, she was about to be proven right. "What happened?" she asked. I set my laptop on the counter and flipped it open. "She's been cheating. At least 8 months. That I can prove." Rachel scanned the evidence, scrolling through the messages, the photos. She processed everything quickly, calm, methodical, analyzing patterns. "2 men," she murmured. "Langston and Davis. Concurrent affairs." She looked up. "How'd you find out?" "One of her co-workers got drunk and told me, thinking I already knew. Apparently, Lauren has been telling people we have an open marriage." Rachel cursed under her breath. "Who else knows?" I exhaled. "At least a dozen people at the hospital. The trainer seems clueless, but his gym staff probably suspects something." Rachel closed the laptop, her face unreadable. "So she's not just cheating, she's humiliating you publicly." I nodded. She took a deep breath, then met my gaze. "What do you want to do?" I didn't hesitate. "I want her destroyed." Rachel's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Then let's make a plan." We spent the next 2 hours mapping out everything. Step 1. Surveillance. We needed more evidence. Rachel had access to discrete cameras that could be hidden in the house, in Lauren's car. Step 2. Financials. Lauren loved her expensive lifestyle, but she had no idea how much control I had over our money. She rarely checked anything beyond our credit card statements. Step 3. Social reputation. Lauren's entire identity was built on her image. Her job, her hospital colleagues, her mother's approval. We would hit every part of it. Rachel tapped her pen against her notepad. This is going to take time. How long? I asked. A month. Maybe 2. I nodded. I can wait. Rachel studied me for a moment. Then there's one more thing. I raised an eyebrow. What? You need to be perfect. Attentive. Romantic. Make her believe everything is fine. Make her fall back into thinking you're still the loving, oblivious husband. You want me to pretend I don't know? Rachel's expression was unyielding. I want you to lull her into a false sense of security so that when you finally strike, it will destroy her completely. I met her gaze. I can do that. Because when I was done, Lauren wouldn't even recognize the life she used to have. The next 2 weeks transformed my home into a surveillance hub. With Rachel's help, we installed nearly invisible cameras in strategic locations: the living room, kitchen, master bedroom, and even Lauren's car. Each night, after she fell asleep, I reviewed the footage with meticulous precision, piecing together the truth of her double life. But the hardest part? Pretending. Every morning, I kissed her goodbye. Every evening, I asked about her day, knowing full well her answers were lies. She played the role of the exhausted wife. I played the role of the adoring husband who believed her. And she bought it. Completely. One evening, as we prepared dinner together, Lauren diced vegetables with her usual precision. Her years as a nurse had made her methodical, even in the kitchen. You seem distant lately, she said, glancing up at me. Everything okay at the shop? I stirred the sauce on the stove, careful to keep my expression neutral. Just busy. That custom Ducati for the tech CEO is taking longer than expected. You work too hard, she murmured, sliding the vegetables into the pan. Her wedding ring caught the light, the same ring she had worn while texting her lovers, planning her affairs in our own home. Maybe we should plan a trip, she suggested, moving behind me and wrapping her arms around my waist. Just the 2 of us. The audacity. I forced a smile. That sounds nice. What were you thinking? There's a new resort on the Olympic Peninsula. Very exclusive. She pressed a soft kiss against my shoulder. We could use some alone time. I turned, meeting her gaze. Searching for any sign of guilt. Nothing. She had perfected her performance. Let me check my schedule, I said smoothly. Do that. She kissed me quickly. I'm going to shower before dinner. I watched her go, my smile fading the second she left the room. My phone buzzed, a text from Rachel. New footage from her car. Call me when you can. Dinner was another exercise in restraint. We talked about meaningless things, a new restaurant opening downtown, an upcoming charity event at the hospital, our plans to redo the garden in spring. Meanwhile, in my head, I was cataloging every single one of her lies. Then she tested me. Andrew mentioned you stopped by the hospital the other day, she said casually, sipping her wine. Said he saw you in the parking lot. A lie. I had never been near the hospital that day. I kept my face neutral. Must have confused me with someone else. I was at the shop all day Wednesday. She relaxed. Yeah, must have been. Confirmation. She was testing my awareness. Trying to see if I was watching her. She didn't suspect a thing. Later that night, after she went to bed, I locked my office door and called Rachel. What did you find? I asked, skipping the small talk. Lauren had a 20-minute conversation with Langston in her car today, Rachel said. They're worried about someone seeing them together. Apparently, a nurse supervisor almost caught them last week. I clenched my jaw. Send me the footage. Already did. But there's more. I waited. I dug into Langston's background, she continued. The guy has a history of affairs with younger nurses. 2 complaints were filed against him in the past 5 years, but they disappeared. My guess. The hospital buried them to avoid a scandal. Can we get copies? Working on it. One of my contacts in HR owes me a favor. Good. How are you holding up? Rachel asked after a pause. Fine, I lied. You sound almost detached. She's a stranger to me now, I said simply. It's easy. Rachel was quiet for a moment. Tomorrow's the coffee shop meeting with Emily. I'll be there. The next day, I arrived at a small coffee shop near the hospital, positioning myself at a corner table. Right on schedule, Emily walked in at 2:07 p.m., looking exhausted from her shift. I waited until she ordered before accidentally running into her. Emily! She turned, blinking in surprise. Twice in 2 weeks. Must be fate. Seattle's a small town, I said smoothly. Join me, unless you're in a rush. Actually, she glanced around before nodding. Sitting down sounds perfect. We settled at the table. She took a long sip of her coffee before sighing. Rough shift? I asked. The worst. Lost a patient, then had to deal with an insurance nightmare. She rubbed her temples. Plus, all the usual drama. I let her vent, steering the conversation exactly where I needed it to go. Eventually, she sighed. I've been meaning to apologize about the other night. For what? She hesitated. For what I said about Lauren. Your arrangement. It wasn't my place. I leaned forward slightly. Actually, I appreciated your honesty. Lauren doesn't tell me much about work. Relief flickered across her face. Really? So you're not mad? Not at all, I lied. It's good to know what's happening in my wife's life. Emily relaxed, convinced she hadn't crossed a line. God, the hospital is a fishbowl, she said. Everyone knows everyone's business, including Lauren and Andrew. I tilted my head. It's that obvious. Oh yeah, she said, rolling her eyes. They think they're being discreet, but the on-call room has thin walls. If you know what I mean. I forced a chuckle. And what about the trainer? Callum? Emily nodded. That's newer. Started a few months ago when she joined that premium gym downtown. She gave me a curious look. You really don't mind discussing this? I shrugged. Our arrangement works for us. She smiled. Well, Callum's definitely in her life. She even shows off his texts during breaks. She lowered her voice. Guy's not exactly Shakespeare, but he's got a body that doesn't quit. Emily suddenly looked embarrassed. Sorry, that was inappropriate. Don't worry about it, I said smoothly. For the next hour, I extracted every detail I could. Who knew about the affairs, which colleagues covered for Lauren, what hotels she used with Langston. As we got up to leave, she shook her head. You're easy to talk to. Most husbands wouldn't be so understanding. I gave her a small smile. I'm not most husbands. That evening, as I reviewed the footage from the coffee shop, Rachel called. Time to move on to phase 2, she said. Which is destroying Dr. Langston. 2 days later, I sat parked outside Magnolia Prep, an upscale private school in one of Seattle's most affluent neighborhoods. The 3-story brick building had a pristine front lawn, the kind of place where tuition alone could buy a brand-new motorcycle every year. Parents waited in luxury SUVs and German sedans, scrolling their phones while their kids in neatly pressed uniforms poured out of the building. Among them, in a silver Mercedes, was Patricia Langston, Andrew Langston's wife. Rachel checked her watch beside me. She's right on schedule. Same pickup time every Monday and Wednesday. What did your hospital contact find? I asked, keeping my eyes on Patricia as she got out of the car. 3 complaints in 5 years, Rachel said, handing me a folder. All young nurses. All alleging inappropriate relationships with Langston. The hospital settled quietly each time. I flipped through the documents. The last settlement was big enough to fund that Mercedes and their vacation home in Aspen. Rachel smirked. Guess we're about to make sure she never drives another one. I studied the information carefully. He has a type. Young. Ambitious. New to the department. Lauren doesn't fit that profile, Rachel noted. She's experienced. Respected. Which means she was likely the aggressor. Doesn't matter. The evidence is all that matters now. Rachel nodded toward Patricia, who was now helping her kids into the car. What's the play? I closed the folder. Anonymous package. Everything we have on Langston and Lauren. Hotel receipts. Text messages. Surveillance photos. We let his wife make the first move. Rachel's lips curled into a small smile. And when she confronts him, we make sure we're watching. 3 days later, Patricia Langston received an unmarked envelope at her doorstep. Inside was a USB drive filled with evidence, messages between her husband and Lauren, photos taken outside of hotels, a detailed timeline of their affair. Rachel had placed a discreet camera outside the Langston home, capturing Patricia's reaction in real time. We watched the footage that evening. First came the confusion. Brows furrowed as she scrolled through the texts. Then the shock. Her fingers tightening on the mouse. Then the rage. She made 3 calls immediately. First, to a lawyer. Second, to her mother. Third, to the hospital administration. Rachel exhaled. She's gathering her forces. Smart woman, I murmured. By that evening, the hospital had called an emergency board meeting. One of Rachel's contacts inside confirmed that Dr. Langston was summoned during his shift and never returned to the floor. At 9:15 p.m., Lauren texted me. Working late. Emergency staff meeting. Don't wait up. Rachel read the message over my shoulder and smirked. Staff meeting, huh? Let's see what's really happening. We switched to the live surveillance footage from Lauren's car camera. She ran to her car, fumbling with her keys. Once inside, she immediately called someone. Vince, what the hell is happening? Langston's voice wasn't audible, but her reaction said it all. What? They said you've been suspended pending investigation. They can't do that. Silence. Then she lowered her voice, almost hissing. No one knows about us. Except, no, that's impossible. He doesn't suspect anything. Rachel snorted. Oh, sweetheart. You have no idea. Lauren gripped the steering wheel, visibly distressed. What about the board? What are they saying? She went pale. They can't fire you, she whispered. You've been there for 15 years. Another silence. Then she ended the call and just sat there, staring. The only emotion I could detect on her face? Fear. Rachel leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. The hospital suspended him. Step 1, complete. And he has no idea who sent the evidence, I added. Which means neither does Lauren. Rachel smirked. Perfect. By morning, Seattle's medical community was buzzing. Dr. Andrew Langston, respected cardiologist, had been suspended for inappropriate relationships with staff. His wife had filed for divorce. The hospital had launched a full investigation. Lauren came home from work that evening looking shell-shocked. I played my part perfectly. Everything okay? I asked, my voice full of concern. She forced a smile, setting her purse on the counter. Hospital politics. One of the doctors is in trouble. Anything serious? She shook her head. Just rumors. I don't want to talk about it. Liar. She disappeared upstairs, clutching her phone like a lifeline. Hours later, the surveillance cameras in our home captured her in the bathroom, whispering urgently. It's a nightmare, Vince. People are talking. Someone sent Patricia everything. She never once expressed guilt. Never said she was sorry. Never even mentioned his wife or kids. Just panic over getting caught. The next week, the hospital's investigation expanded. Langston's partners in private practice began distancing themselves. His career was unraveling. And Lauren? She was scrambling to keep up appearances. But she had no idea. She was next. Rachel and I had saved Lauren's destruction for last. Because money was the thing she cared about most. She loved our lifestyle. Our spacious home. The luxury SUV I had bought for her last year. The designer clothes. The 5-star vacations. She had no idea that I had already started dismantling all of it. At 11 a.m., I sat in the downtown office of Patricia Martin, one of Seattle's most feared divorce attorneys. You've known about the affairs for a month, Patricia said, scanning my financial records. But haven't confronted her? I nodded. I needed everything in order first. She smiled approvingly. Smart move. Most clients come to me after they've blown up their marriage. By then, the assets are already hidden. Not this time, I said. She flipped through my bank statements. You handle all the finances. Lauren barely checks the credit card statements unless she's shopping. Patricia leaned back in her chair. Then let's cut her off. That afternoon, I moved every joint asset into my private business accounts. $175,000 transferred. Shared credit cards cancelled. Investment portfolios frozen. By 5 p.m., Lauren called me. Her voice was panicked. Jax, something's wrong. Our bank accounts, I can't access anything. I kept my voice calm. Really? That's strange. I called the bank. You made changes. What's going on? I checked my watch. Right on schedule. I'm in the middle of something, I said smoothly. We'll talk about it tonight. I hung up. Rachel grinned. That should keep her busy for a few hours. By 7 p.m., she called again. No. Frantic. I let it ring. When I finally picked up, she nearly screamed. What the hell is happening? I had to borrow money to put gas in my car. I smiled to myself. The woman who had spent months humiliating me was finally learning what it felt like to be powerless. And it was only just beginning. By the time I pulled into the driveway that night, I already knew exactly what to expect. Lauren would be waiting. Panicked. Angry. Desperate. I took my time entering the house, unlocking the door with deliberate slowness. Sure enough, she was in the kitchen, pacing, phone clutched in her hand. Her face was flushed, and her normally composed demeanor was gone. The second she saw me, she exploded. Jax, what the hell is going on? I set my keys down calmly. What do you mean? Our bank accounts, she snapped. All of them. I can't access anything. My cards aren't working. You need to fix this now. I took a long, slow breath, pretending to think. Oh, that? Yeah, I made some security adjustments. She blinked. Security adjustments? Yeah. I shrugged. After what happened to Langston, I figured it was time to protect our assets. You know, in case of any unexpected scandals. Her face lost color. What do you mean, scandals? She asked carefully. I tilted my head. You know, the hospital investigating staff misconduct. Doctors getting fired for inappropriate behavior. Lawsuits. Things like that. I watched as she put the pieces together. The hospital was cracking down. Langston was finished. If they started investigating her next, she would be ruined. She swallowed hard. I don't understand why you'd freeze our accounts. I took a step closer, letting my voice drop just slightly. Because I don't trust you, Lauren. Her breath hitched. What are you talking about? I exhaled, shaking my head. See, here's the thing about lying, Lauren. I smiled faintly. You have to be really, really good at it. But you were sloppy. Her lips parted. Jax, I don't. You left breadcrumbs, I continued, my tone still calm, still steady. A cancelled dinner with friends here. A hotel receipt there. A few too many late shifts at the hospital that didn't quite match up. She froze. I took another step forward. But the best part. I chuckled. You were so confident, so sure I'd never suspect a thing, that you didn't even bother to hide it properly. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. With one tap, I opened her hidden burner phone. The color drained from her face. I found this in your closet, I said, tossing it onto the counter. Imagine my surprise when I saw 8 months' worth of messages. Her hand flew to her mouth. And Callum, I continued. Man, you really had him fooled. He thought he was dating a single woman. You even wore your wedding ring to the gym. Guess that's why you always took it off before your sessions. She stumbled back. I placed both hands on the counter, leaning in just enough to watch her squirm. Did you really think you could do this and just get away with it? Her mouth opened, but no words came out. For the first time in our marriage, Lauren was speechless. I let that moment sit. Let her feel the weight of everything I knew. Then I straightened and stepped back. Anyway, like I said, I made some financial adjustments. You don't have access to our accounts anymore. You're cut off. Lauren sucked in a sharp breath. You can't do that, she choked out. I tilted my head. Oh, I already did. Her eyes widened. Jax, please, she whispered. I can explain. I let out a low, humorless laugh. Explain. You've been sleeping a married doctor and some clueless trainer for almost a year. What's left to explain? Tears welled in her eyes. I was lost. I scoffed. Lost. It just happened, she pleaded. I never meant to hurt you. Oh, spare me. She flinched. You didn't slip and fall into Langston's bed, Lauren. You made calculated choices every single day. She tried to reach for my hand, but I stepped back. Don't. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I still love you. No, you don't, I said coldly. You love what I gave you. The house. The vacations. The comfort. But me. I shook my head. You threw me away the second you got bored. She sagged against the counter, shaking. Jax, please, we can fix this. We can go to therapy. I'll do whatever it takes. I took a slow breath. Oh, there's no we anymore, Lauren. Her face crumpled. Then, finally, I dropped the hammer. I filed for divorce this morning. She stilled. By this time next month, you won't just be alone, Lauren, I said. You'll be broke. Unemployed. And everyone you care about will know exactly what kind of woman you are. The tears stopped. Now, there was something else in her eyes. Terror. Because she finally understood. I wasn't here to beg. I was here to bury her. Jax, she whispered, voice shaking. You don't have to do this. I let out a low chuckle, shaking my head. Lauren, I didn't do this. You did. She stepped forward, reaching out like she thought she could still fix this, but I stepped back. Don't, I said, voice flat. Don't touch me. Her lip trembled, and for the first time in months, I saw something real in her eyes. Fear. You can't just walk away from everything we built, she tried again. We've been together for years, Jax. Doesn't that mean something to you? I scoffed. It used to. She clenched her fists, her breath shaky. So, what now? You just throw me away. I tilted my head. Like you did to me? She swallowed hard, shaking her head like she couldn't believe this was happening. Where am I supposed to go? She whispered. I shrugged. Not my problem. Her face crumbled. You don't mean that, she choked out. I exhaled slowly, my patience gone. Lauren, as of this morning, I filed for divorce. The paperwork is done. You have nothing left here. Her whole body sagged against the counter, defeated. I stepped toward the door, grabbing my keys. You have until tomorrow to get your things. She jerked her head up. Tomorrow. I nodded. Locks are getting changed first thing in the morning. Lauren let out a strangled laugh, like she thought this was some kind of sick joke. But when I didn't react, she realized. I wasn't bluffing. Jax, she said, more desperate now. You don't have to do this. We can fix. I turned back, my voice sharp. Get out, Lauren. She flinched. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I didn't have to. I had already won. She stared at me, chest rising and falling rapidly, her mind racing for a way to turn this around. But there wasn't one. She had lost. Completely. I opened the door, stepping aside. Go. She hesitated, looking at me like she thought I might change my mind. I didn't. She grabbed her purse with shaking hands, her movements sluggish, like she was in shock. Then, without another word, she stepped outside. I shut the door behind her. And locked it. By morning, the locks were changed. Lauren tried calling 14 times. I let them all go to voicemail. Then she started texting. Jax, please talk to me. I messed up. I know that. But we can fix this. Please, don't shut me out. I love you. Lie. Another lie. By noon, I sent one final message. The locks have been changed. Don't come back. She didn't reply. That night, I opened a beer, sat on my back porch, and let out the first real breath I'd taken in months. Lauren was gone. For good. The divorce moved fast. Thanks to Rachel's legal connections, Lauren got almost nothing. She tried to fight it, tried to claim she was entitled to more, tried to play the victim. But the evidence was airtight. She got no spousal support. No assets. Nothing. She packed what little she had left and moved into a cheap apartment across town. I heard from mutual acquaintances that she was struggling. Couldn't keep up with rent. Had to sell her designer bags. Tried getting a job at another hospital, but word had spread. Her reputation was ruined. And me. I didn't look back. Thank you for visited my YouTube channel. Your support, likes, and comments truly inspire me to create even more engaging content. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. You're a part of this amazing community, and I'm thrilled to share my stories with you. See you in the next video on YouTube.